the last video, we talked about some of the similarities between Mexico and Nigeria in terms of the presidency, and there are a lot of them. Both countries look a lot like the United States in terms of the structure of the presidency, but there are some differences. The biggest one is probably the use of term limits. So in Mexico, we talked about that really strict 1 6-year term limit that limits or that prevents re-election for the Mexican president. Nigeria has a system that's modeled more like the United States, 2 4-year terms and the possibility of re-election for the Nigerian president. We also see some differences within the electoral system and the possibility of a runoff election in Nigeria, although it doesn't happen much, and it has a pretty low bar to kind of surpass in order to prevent that. The position of vice president exists in Nigeria as well, so they have a pretty similar line of succession to the United States. And I would say the last difference is Mexican democracy in general is just more developed than Nigeria. They have a little bit of a head start, as well as the status of being a developing country rather than a less developed country. You have some ways in which Nigeria's democracy is hindered by the lack of economic development within the country as well. All right, so let's talk about kind of the presidency in Nigeria. So Nigeria hasn't always been a presidential style democracy. From 1960 to 1979, they were patterned after the UK, which is parliamentary style, which we haven't talked about in class yet. But essentially, kind of the coalition building that has to take place within a parliamentary style was very, very difficult given Nigeria's ethnic divisions and really kind of the sheer amount of kind of politics that has to happen inside of a country like this. So what you kind of see on the right-hand side is the transitions in leadership, which from 1960 to 1993, you'll notice a lot, or 1998, you'll notice a lot of the same type of things, which are military dictatorships and military coups. And a few people that have actually become really important in the post kind of military dictatorship era of Nigerian politics. The current president, Muhammad Buhari, and one of the first presidents, Olusegun Obasanjo. All right. So the president within the executive branch of Nigeria is directly elected to a 4-year term with a 2-term limit. So a lot like the United States. So we see kind of what we talked about before with the potential for a runoff election. So the candidate must win a majority of votes cast and at least 25% of votes in 2/3 of Nigeria's states. So this has come pretty close to having to have a second round. And then, so they kind of have the rule of majority, and then the second rule is meant to ensure that essentially a president doesn't come out of one part of the country, and kind of Nigeria is less likely to splinter along ethnic lines. But we have seen actually that occur in recent years. So the current president, Muhammad Buhari, he is at this point probably about 78. I'm not sure exactly when the slideshow is from. He, like we said before, he's from kind of the military dictator era of Nigerian politics, and he has reintroduced himself as a more statesman-like figure. And he is not a clone, so that was a worry as he had some health problems last year. There were a lot of conspiracy theories that there were clones of him in charge of the country at certain points, but I don't think that actually happened. So this was the last election. So as we talked about before, he is kind of Muslim. He's from the northern part of Nigeria, I think, or at least his sort of appeal is from the northern part of Nigeria. So we have seen kind of in recent years Nigerian politics splinter a little bit among kind of religious lines. So his power base is mostly in the north. And we've seen the two major powers, the All Progressive Congress, which Buhari was a part of, and the People's Democratic Party, which is kind of the last 3 or 4 presidents were part of, are sort of splintering along the different kind of parts of the country, or the different halves of the country. All right. So, some really interesting things as it relates to the geography of Nigeria, and kind of in relationship to these sort of issues. So, the executive may appoint officials to all parts of the national government without the approval of legislatures. So, um, one thing they do though, is that cabinet members have to come from different states. So Nigeria has a really strong, in order to ensure the ethnic uh, representation, kind of different groups that live within the country. They have what's called the federal character principle, which says that cabinet members from each state must be appointed. So one of the most important powers of the executive is that they receive and distribute the oil revenue within the country. So oil money is one of the big things that kind of pushes Nigeria along, and then sometimes oil revenue is probably one of the big things that holds Nigeria back from being pushed along. So we will talk about that sort of push and pull that exists as it relates to oil and oil money, kind of later on in this unit. And head of this is really intense patron-client network. So again, kind of the system by which a lot of the informal power exists within Nigeria is kind of the granting of positions, the elevating of cronies and people from their network and things like that. There's that sort of is very characteristic of the Nigerian system, and also some other sort of standard president powers, commands the armed forces, veto power, things like that. So, kind of just to summarize, we see a lot of the same things in Mexico and Nigeria, kind of the traditional executive powers plus the informal but really important oversight of of kind of the patron client networks that exist within civil society. And I would also add the fact that because the other branches of government within each country are weaker than they sort of constitutionally should be, the executive power sort of grows to fill in that void as well. So a lot of similarities between the two countries. Bye.